Mr. Kip Sorensen, what's up, brother? We're trying new things here, man. I think a couple of weeks ago we were live on YouTube. Today we're live on Facebook, in our Facebook group, I should say. So you got to join our Facebook group if you want to check these things out live.
I like it. We're innovating. Innovation.
That's what it's all about.
That's best.
Yep, that's what it's all about. So everything going good for you?
Good, man. It's unfortunately, like you, this COVID-19 thing hasn't really affected me much, if anything, where it's just pivoting. And let's be frank, like that's how all of us should be dealing with this, is pivoting, adjusting, and doing what we need to do to stay effective and to adjust. So.
Yeah, that pivot is a good thing anyways. And these types of interesting times breed innovation and new ideas and new thoughts and cause you to think about your life and how you're showing up and the things that you're doing. So I certainly experienced that because it's just time to mix things up. So it's good to be in that position.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Cool. Should we get into the questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Since we're on Facebook, why don't we start with the Facebook questions? Because we're here answering those questions, and I'm pretty sure we're live on Facebook. I don't know if it's working or not, but do
you want me to hop on over there and to give it a whirl, give it a check?
No, well, maybe when I'm riffing on a question, I'm on my soapbox or something like that. Okay. Actually, no, I just saw a comment come up, so we are live on Facebook, so we're good to go.
Here we go.
All right, here we go. Don't mess
cursing.
up, Kip.
Don't mess up. PG only. All right.
Good luck on that.
Well, and thanks for pulling an audible there and saying, hey, we're switching to Facebook. I'm like, I never thought I would get to those questions, so let me hop on over there.
Oh, sorry. I should have told you ahead of time.
It's fine. I'm just looking for excuses for my lack of effectiveness. All right, here we go. So John Kell.
Okay.
What programming do you use in your home gym? Programming. I'm not quite sure what he means by that. Are you solely in a home gym now that you're in Maine, or do you still go into the box aside from jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, so program, he's talking about my training regimen. That's what he's referring to. So I do a lot of just like my own programming, what I think is good, what I like to do, and just kind of mix it up that way. So that's one thing I do. I just started working with a member actually of our Facebook group. His name is Josiah Novak. So he is my coach. I just hired him last week. So I've only gone through, I think, 3 training sessions with him at this point.
Okay.
My goal really is to build and develop strength at this point. So I've lost a lot of weight over the past month or so. And yeah, like I said, right now my goal is to build muscle, density, strength. And hopefully when I get back to jiu-jitsu, I may not be as technical as the other guys, but I want to be stronger than all of them. So
I'll be able to crush their face even if I don't have the choke. Yeah.
Man, what is it? The insult? Man, you're really strong.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a
I want that
jiu-jitsu insult.
I want that insult.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I'll have coming out of 6 weeks of quarantine and no jiu-jitsu under my belt for that amount of time. So
yeah, well, and that goes for a lot of us not training. So let me ask you, do you find that difficult to kind of go off and riff on your programming versus having something set in stone? Because we tell guys sometimes that like have a regiment so that way when you go to the gym, you don't overthink it. You don't have to like, what should I do? And you waste time. So I'm curious.
There is certainly that. The trap that I fall into when I do my own programming is taking it too easy on myself. So that it's not that I won't do it. It's not that I spend a bunch of time thinking about what should and shouldn't be done. It's that I just take it way too easy on myself, and having somebody else, an objective party, program it and tell me to push harder and tell me what prescribed weight based on other things I've done pushes me harder than me just doing it by myself.
Totally.
I mean, that's the power of accountability, whether it's in the Iron Council or being accountable to your wife and kids or friends in the community. The fact that they will push you harder than yourself because they're not tied to your baggage and your head trash and the things that you're telling yourself is going to help you push further than you would alone. So having mentors, having accountability, having a band of brothers, having coaches, paying for those coaches. In fact, I'm in the market right now talking with a couple different coaches with regards to business specifically. And I'm considering spending a lot of money for business coaching because I know I'll write that check. And I know that they're going to push me harder outside of my comfort zone than I would just do by myself. So,
yeah. Well, it's interesting how we don't even think certain things are possible.
Right.
Like my strength and conditioning coach, when he gives the regimen on the board, I'm like, I would have never thought that was like, I laugh, right? When he tells me the rep count, I'm thinking, I don't even know if that's even plausible. So there's no way I would have even come up with that on my own. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and plus you're weak, so that adds to
Yeah,
it. So.
but my technique is good.
True. This is true.
I'm just joking. All right, Justin the Cuff. I know you use the battle planner, but is there anything else that you use to track daily tasks like workouts, reading, meals, and etc.? Something more detailed?
No, not really. I mean, I use the battle planner for things. There's certain things I don't need to track. Like I don't need to track my meals.
Yeah.
And I realize some people do. Maybe they want to weigh their protein and they want to have the right portions. I don't do that. I don't need to do that. I can be pretty disciplined on that. And I'm not saying I'm better than somebody else because of that. I'm just saying that isn't an issue.
We're all different.
Right. So yeah, that's nothing I track. I use Josiah's training program app for tracking weight and all that stuff. So it just documents it. He sends
you have
the program.
like your PRs and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So he'll send the program. I write in there, okay, I did 10 reps at 135 pounds or whatever, right? And then it'll track it all for me and it'll tell me what I did yesterday, so I can try to beat it again today. What other tracking programs? Yeah, not really. That's really about it. The strength training program. I'm just trying to think on my phone, like what other apps did I have? Oh, because I'm playing the guitar a little bit more, there's a program I've been using called Musician. And that's a cool program because it tracks how much time I put in on a daily basis and how I'm progressing, what chords I've learned and what I learned throughout the week. So like stuff like that, just apps based on things that I enjoy and like to do. But for my daily activities, the things that I'm trying to program into habit, as James Clear would say, in Atomic Habits, like programming it into habit, those are the things that I track via my battle planner.
Copy. And for you guys, Justin, you obviously know this because you're using a battle planner, but for people that don't know, that battle planner has a section for note taking, for tracking some tasks. It's not just your objectives and your tactics. So that's why, that lends itself to work really well with just whether it's maintaining, what does Andy Frisella call his power list or whatever, could potentially work in the battle planner. Why? Because it has that section in there. So,
right. Well, apparently Facebook Live is no longer working because we are no longer live on Facebook. So,
all right. Well, I guess we're done. See you guys.
That's it. Call it a day. We answered 2 questions. We're done. I don't know why it ended, but it did. So we'll have to try again maybe next week.
No, we must have said something inappropriate. We got blocked.
Not we. You.
You.
Let's get this right.
Although that might be a compliment nowadays, right? If you get blocked by Facebook, you
Holy
might.
cow, you're not kidding,
right.
man. You're not kidding. I posted something on Facebook. Was it last week? I think it was last week. It must have been last week. And I was just talking about in the post how you're going to be judged regardless of what you do. If you're skinny, you're weak. If you're big, you're fat. If you're a Democrat, you're an idiot. If you're a Republican, you're heartless. Like, just kind of went through this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I one of the things I put on there, and this is going to get me in trouble because I'm going to say it. I put, if you're straight, you hate gays. If you're gay, you're a faggot. That's what I said in the thing. But in the context of what I was talking about, I wasn't calling gay people faggots, right? I was saying that like what
the
people
typical stereotypes,
exactly,
labels that we put on things. Yeah,
right. So I put that on Facebook, and their algorithm or bot or whatever flagged that because they considered it hate speech, and that's part of the problem with allowing bots and algorithms to dictate what is proper and appropriate and what isn't. Is it won't catch context. And if anything, that post that I made was actually the antithesis of hate. It was like, we're all different. Like, give each other some leniency. It's not as big a deal as we think it is, all these things that people like to debate and argue about. And so it was the exact opposite of what they said it was. But the bot couldn't pick up on context and nuance. It's just a very dangerous precedent, I think, that's being set. Yeah. It's unfortunate.
I find that, I actually, if you don't mind me riffing or asking you this question, because I've always wondered about this, because Facebook is obviously not, it's not a right? Like, we're not entitled to have Facebook around. But there's this thin line of kind of suppression of free speech per se, because Facebook says, hey, I don't want you to post that. But then again, they are their own organization, their own platform. Mm-hmm. And if we don't, you know what I mean? And they have that right to also dictate what they may want to put on there. What's your thoughts on that? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I think I think your assessment is accurate. This is a private company. Now, some people say, well, they're putting themselves out as a broadcaster. So, that falls under the protections of the First Amendment. I see both sides of that, but I don't think any company, even though they may have the right to do it, I don't think any company ought to dictate, especially when you have a Facebook, a YouTube, an Instagram, some of these platforms like this, should dictate what is and is not appropriate. I don't think that is...
It's a dangerous direction to go.
Yeah. I don't think it's... Look, if somebody's going to be offended about something that I or you say or anybody says, then just unfollow, unsubscribe. But I think you should be able to say whatever you want to say, even hateful things, even hostilities, free of I would say short of calling for violence against people. I think that's an issue. But if you have some thoughts about that, look, we live in a time where violence is down, access to healthcare is up until recently, that is. People are living longer. Everything's good. Everything's good, right? And if you're going to be offended about things, like, that's on you. Like, I just don't. I'm at a loss for words, quite frankly, because I just have never imagined that people would be so weak and pathetic that they would allow these words to hurt them. I mean, it's like the old adage when you were in school: it's like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Exactly. Like, toughen up. So somebody doesn't like you. Somebody doesn't like that you're gay, or that you're a certain color, or that you're a Republican, or that you're a Democrat, or that you're this or you're that. Okay, well, so what? Like, you really want to interact with that individual anyways? And also, let's take racism, for example. I know racism exists. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm saying that it's less than it's ever been in history. Ever. That doesn't mean that we don't have room to improve. We certainly do. It just means it's better than it's ever been. And if somebody comes at you or me or in a group with racist comments and ideas, that person will be called out.
Yeah.
Like, it'll regulate itself.
Yeah.
We don't need Big Brother coming in and saying, "Oh, well, let's make sure we protect people." No, that individual will be, that'll be policed by itself. So I just think it's a very dangerous precedent, because if you say you can't say this, then what else can't you say? And how far down that road do we go?
Yeah, it can be a slippery slope. And
truly,
to your point too, I think people that are, let's be frank, it's not easy to take attacks, right? I don't even deal with good attacks.
I got to stop you right there, though, Kip, okay? Because, and I don't want to interrupt, but it's important we use the right words. I don't even like using that word, attack. Like, what do you mean? Like, somebody verbally attacked or verbally assaulted me. What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's adding a whole other meaning to what was actually done. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, Jordan Peterson talks about being precise with your language. Someone may have insulted you verbally, sure. Yeah. But attacked you? Come on. Like, let's not go there. But anyways, continue your point. I just want to make sure I brought that up.
No, and I like that. So if someone insults you, what's ironic about that is it's superficial in most cases anyway. Like, let's be honest, like, most people that are insulting you or I or anyone else, it's not from a position of them actually knowing you. So the weight in the insult is very superficial. It lacks evidence and a bunch of other stuff, but yet we take it personal, like as if that individual knows us or for some odd reason we should respect them. So it's even, I don't know, we put way too much weight on those insults from a complete stranger in which you don't know. And people have a tendency to insult not based upon merit or anything else, but they look for the area that would piss you off.
Oh, of course. They're masterful at it.
Yeah, exactly. And that just proves or just adds to the lack of weight that's in the insult. Mm-hmm. But yet we take it too personal, I think.
Well, somebody had posted, and this might have been in an Ask Me Anything several months ago or something. Somebody had said, what do I do if somebody lies about me? Or somebody says something about me. I can't remember exactly how they worded it. They said something about them that they didn't like. That's what it was. Like, they said something about me I didn't like. I said, well, you have two choices. Is it true? Okay, if it's true, then correct it and move forward. If it's not true, don't worry about it. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, there's nothing else you can do. That's it. That's the only two choices you have. Yeah. But people have a hard time with that.
Well, and it's interesting because your natural tendency is to like, well, I need to correct them. or I need to do, but it's also like, that's not going to work. You realize that, right? Like everyone debating, everyone thinks that like, okay, well, if I get angry and I make some really solid points and if I insult them, they're going to like kowtow and go, oh, you know what? You're right, Ryan. I shouldn't have done that. It's like, no, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's never going to work. People don't change their minds because you're attacking them.
Insulting them.
Insulting them.
Or offending them.
Offending them. I'll get it.
All right. Hey, we're back on Facebook. I just pulled it back up, so we're trying it again.
All right. Perfect for the next excellent name to pronounce. Per Sigurd, this is an alphabet. What do you guys think about tribalism? The way of the men is the way of the gang.
Yeah, so the way of men is the way of the gang. That's a reference to Jack Donovan and his book, The Way of Men, because he talks a lot about that. Yeah, look, we do band together in common interest, and I think there's a lot of value in that. I mean, we do that here in Order of Men, right? We have some founding guiding principles. Men are protectors, providers, presiders. We take accountability and responsibility for ourselves. Those things that we just talk about and have for the past 5 years are foundational principles that all of us agree on to some level, right? Some more than others, but to some level, like we all pretty much agree on that. And I think that's a good thing because you find opportunities to band with other men or people who are interested in the same thing as you. And this goes back to what we were talking about with mentors, is they'll push you, they'll motivate you, they'll inspire you, they'll lead you to where it is you want to go. Maybe they're further down the track and you can learn and grow from that individual because they've been where you were 6 months ago or a year ago. So there's a lot of value to that. There's also strength in numbers too, right? Like we're stronger when we're banded together in these common interests. But like anything, it can be taken to an unhealthy level, right? And when we're talking about tribalism, typically the context that we're talking about is shutting down other people's perspectives and viewpoints because they're at direct odds with ours. We use tactics that are intellectually dishonest. We attack them or insult them or offend them, verbally, or put down their who they are as an individual rather than their discussion, their talking points. So when you're defending an ideology without accepting that there might be a differing perspective that would broaden your horizons and open up you to new ideas and new information that will serve you well, then it becomes an issue. But banding together in common interests is a great thing. It's when it starts to hinder your progress and growth and you start to defend ideologies, sometimes even violently and dangerously, without experiencing some sort of other perspective and openness to new information and new ideas. And that's an issue. That becomes a problem. I mean, the religion has gone there. Think about religion. Religion is men and women banded together towards a belief in a higher power. There's founding principles in those religions, but then when they use religion to justify attacking violently and physically other people, then that becomes tribalism, and that's an issue, right? So there's a line here, and I think most of us hopefully understand what it is and can explore where that line is and choose not to step over it.
Yeah. And I could see where those issues exist, whether in a gang or a tribe.
Right. Exactly.
Like just on an individual basis, right? If you're justifying those actions regardless, like it's negative, period.
That's why I don't like the word gang. Like Jack Donovan and I are friends, but I don't like that word. Like the way of men is the way of the gang, because gang, that typically has a negative connotation and people believe it to mean one thing. And so we have to be very clear on the words that we're using. He doesn't mean that in a negative way.
Yeah.
He's using it interchangeably with the word tribe. I would prefer that or a band of brothers. There's other terms, but I mean, we don't need to get hooked up in the semantics. Unfortunately, we kind of do because people have a really difficult time understanding context and nuance. And I see this in discussions all the time. People will hone in on one word and they're like, you're using that word. It's like, yes, but you also understand what I mean. And now we're just like talking over each other. We're not even addressing the issue. We're addressing Webster's definition of what that word means, when really we could be having this real discussion about the issue instead of the word you or I chose to use. You just have to be careful of that.
Yeah. Copy. Harper Mooser, what is the best way for someone who has had a hard time with word usage to explain this movement to a seemingly progressive woman?
I would actually question why you feel the need to explain this or anything to this woman. Now, if she's your wife, got it, check. There's some things that you're going to need to explain to her.
Yeah.
If it's a coworker who, let's just go to the extreme, who's belligerent and an extreme feminist, like, why? Why would you even go there? Like, what's the point of that? So before you talk about like wording and verbiage and explaining yourself and how best to do it, ask yourself if you should even do that in the first place. That's the first question. Yeah. And then if you determine, yeah, I do want to explain myself, then explain in a way that highlights the benefits of what we're doing here. You know, like lifting men up, teaching them how to be strong and capable, teaching them how to communicate with other people, how to lead their families, how to serve, how to improve the value that they're adding in their communities and their families and their businesses. Like, no rational person would argue against that. Now, maybe they're going to debate about the way we go about doing it or some of the language that we've used, because of course that's just how people disagree. But no rational person is going to debate the idea of equipping men with the tools and resources and conversations like this to improve their capabilities, to add value, to serve, to lead, to make money, to get strong, to provide for their wife and their children. Like, no rational person would debate. And if they have an issue with that, that's probably pretty telling. It goes back to the first thing I said, which is, are you banging your head against the wall, against something that you shouldn't even be worrying about? Because I deal with this all the time. People, oh, what do you mean by this? Explain this, explain your... No, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to take all of my time and energy and explain it to those who would be positively impacted by the work that I'm doing. I'm not going to try to beat my head against the wall by explaining it to you, somebody who doesn't even want to understand what we're trying to accomplish here, or refuses to look at this in an objective way. Like, you have your own story and your own experience, and I can certainly appreciate that, but it's clouding your ability to see what we're doing here. And until you're ready to some degree to at least explore the idea that maybe there's thousands and thousands of men having some powerful conversations, I'm really not willing to invest a whole lot of time and energy to explain it to you.
Yeah. What I like about that, Ryan, is because correct me if I'm wrong, it's you being clear on the objective and the vision and the purpose of this movement. It's not to get the acceptance and to convince anybody. It's actually to provide value to those willing to listen.
Great point.
Period.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, I do have a lot of people that ask, like, well, explain yourself. Like, if anybody comes at me with that, the answer is no. I don't owe you an explanation. Now, if you genuinely want, and I know because I've been in the game long enough where I know somebody genuinely wants an explanation, or they need a clarification on something, I would be happy to entertain that. But if somebody's like, well, you need to explain yourself because blah, 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 like, I know that individual is not interested in hearing my explanation. They're actually more interested in walking me into a trap. And I've seen enough traps, and I've fallen into enough traps to realize and see the signs for what they are, and I choose not to step into them.
Yeah. And what purpose does that serve? Like, it's just not effective, right? Like, that's not the effective thing to do.
Right.
It's a waste of energy and time.
Exactly.
Greg Rocky Walker, how do you lead your family to be financially sound in times like these? And maybe not necessarily you, but maybe some advice for guys, I guess.
Sure.
Because this time is different for all of us.
How can he do that for sure?
Yeah.
I get
that's
that.
What I think.
Well, I think number one, you have to have it locked in, right? If you're stressed out and you're up to your eyeballs in debt and you don't have any money set aside and no financial provisions and no food storage, then it's going to be very difficult for you to say something that's going to actually have any weight or impact. There's no meaning behind, there's no weight behind your words because they're empty, right? You're not doing it yourself, and everybody can see right through that. So certainly you want to start getting this stuff locked in. There's all sorts of podcasts and books that you can read. Total Money Makeover is a great introductory system and process for improving your finances. You can get into investing. And I mean, there's just so much information out there. If you exert yourself, just even to the slight degree, you'll find that information. And then outside of that, just talking with your family about these things. I think money is an issue that generally is something that a lot of parents aren't willing to bring up. And what a shame. Like, you've got you've got a wife and kids that you could talk with about this stuff and share. And when my kids ask me, how much did you pay for your truck? Like, I tell them, here's what I paid, and here were the terms, or I paid cash, or whatever, like whatever the process was. I told them. When they ask about the house, like, how much did you buy this house for? I tell them, here's what I bought it for. And here's how much money we put down, and here's how much is left. And now the bank wants, 4.5% interest, and here's the payment, and here's how, like, why wouldn't I share that stuff? But I think too many parents shy away from that. Maybe it's an ego thing or an uncomfort thing, but
I was going to say, why do you think they do?
I think if they're in a bad financial position, they don't want to disclose that.
Yeah.
And then it's uncomfortable too, right? To talk about money, because most people are pretty clueless. Financial literacy is at an all-time low, it seems like. And so, like, how do you explain something that you don't understand? You don't.
Yeah. Or you're going to feel bad when you tell Timmy that you took out a massive loan for that truck that you can't afford,
Exactly.
Your son's like, Dad.
Yeah, you're making it.
That doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah, and little Timmy can see it better than Dad might be able to, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's why. The other suggestion I would give is include your children in the process of managing money. So that might be an allowance. And like my two oldest boy, well, not my second boy gets an allowance, and he pays tithing out of it, and he sets some of it aside, and then the rest is for him to use. Right now, that's teaching him in real dollars how to use that money. My oldest son manages the store. So he knows, hey, look, here's how much you get paid per package. If you can do it faster, you make more per hour. If you can cut back on costs for, like, we just got a brand new printer, for example. And instead of being an ink printer, it's, I think they call it like a thermal printer, where it just like burns it or etches it onto the label or something. And it's significantly faster and less expensive. So now I show them, okay, look, instead of spending 10 cents on every package for a label, now we're spending 2 cents. So that means for every package we send, we save 8 cents. And he's like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, that's 8 cents more in our pocket, times 100, times 1,000, times 10,000. He's like, oh, that's really cool. So like you figure this stuff out and you get them involved in the process. Even Monopoly is a great way to show it. Little lessons, depending on how old they are, about how money works and how expenses happen and income tax. And as you're going through it, it says, pay $200 in property tax. Like, explain to them, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. When you get a check in the mail for your actual property, or an invoice for your actual property tax, like, show it to them. Look, we own this land and they want $5,000 in property taxes, right? Like, explain all of it and just be open with them, and they'll start to get it and see it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny how that stuff can affect you when you get older, right? I remember, this is just funny. I think it's funny anyway, is I remember graduating high school, and one time when I was a senior or junior, my dad told me how much he had made, but that's all I knew. Like, I knew actually, I don't even think he told me. I think I saw like a payroll check.
Okay.
And I looked at that. I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of money. Right. But I have no idea anything else. And so I went into college. My focus in college was make more than him by the time I graduate. Well, guess what? That wasn't very much money. In fact, it was not enough at all.
Right.
But I set some goal on some arbitrary number because I didn't see the bigger picture of what cost really, was, and what kind of bills exist and all those kind of things, because I was just shielded by them, and I was unaware of them. And so I even set some goal as a kid based upon, half-baked information that I never really received around finances.
Yeah.
So,
this is why I have a hard time when I see businesses are like, oh, I'm a 7-figure business. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, does that mean you grow
tons
7
of
figures,
employees,
but you made $1 this year? Because I've seen that. Or
totally.
Even worse, you lose money.
Yeah.
Or does that mean 7 figures goes into your pocket? Like, you have to be very careful. Again, this goes back to the wording people use. You have to be very careful with the words that people are using, because they'll try. And look, I'm not above it. I'm a marketer, right? So there's words I'm using. You're like, okay, wait, what does he mean by that? And you should ask for clarification. I got on a call the other day with, what was it? He was always offering like a new program that we were considering using in the Iron Council. And he was using this like really cryptic language. He was like, I'm like, hold on. I said, with all due respect, I don't know what you're saying. Like, you're being very cryptic and you're using this language, because I asked what a feature did. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm sure I could talk with our manager and like work something out. And I'm like, well, no.
So it doesn't exist, but
Right.
you think it can, and
Exactly.
that will cost us money.
I'm like, I need to know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then he clarified, and I'm like, okay, I don't actually like that, but it's good that I know that because now I can make a more informed decision. And that's my responsibility as the consumer to make sure that I don't let a sales guy get away with some cryptic language and then interpret it as something positive in my head and then actually purchase the thing and be disappointed. So be very cautious. If there's an underlying thread of what we're talking about today, it's like language is important. It's really interesting because language are just noises that are coming from our bodies. I think that's all it is. It's just these weird noises that the human body makes. But collectively, we've agreed that that particular noise you're making right now means X, Y, and Z. And then you make decisions based on the collective understanding of what that noise means. So words are very, very important, and we ought to recognize the power of them.
Yeah, and then through our experience, we create our own personal meaning that no one even knows about that we add to everything as well, right?
Right, which is that's a whole other issue because if I think, let's say we're looking at this new car, all right? My wife and I are looking at this new car, and I think the color is red, and she thinks the color is green, but it's actually the same color. And we say, and she calls and she's like, "Yeah, I want a green car." You know what I'm saying? The point I'm trying to make here. Maybe I'm butchering this, but all of a sudden it comes back and it's like, "Wait, that's not the car color I wanted." She's like, "You said green." I'm like, "That's red." She's like, "No, that's green." Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Totally. You know. So, anyways, I think you get the point. Maybe bad analogy.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah. It didn't work. Well, I think most people get it, but it didn't work.
I was waiting for you to say she's colorblind or something. I'm
I don't know. Let's just move on.
The way I've heard it is you can both have your eyes closed and be touching an animal, and one person feels the trunk of an elephant, the other person's touching the tail. And that perception is they're touching a different animal. They both think they are, but it's really the same animal.
Right.
I don't know if that works any better.
Nah. I mean, it was a little better than mine, but not much.
All right. Michael Madhu, if you're an atheist, how do you balance the need to find purpose as a man with the knowledge and belief that life is ultimately without purpose beyond that of reproduction and continuation of species?
Well, why do you do anything now? Why did you even ask that question if it doesn't matter? Obviously, something matters to you. You wouldn't even ask that question if it didn't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have put your clothes on. You wouldn't have went to work. You wouldn't have your family. You wouldn't engage in a hobby. Like if nothing mattered to you, I don't know, I guess maybe you'd run around naked and play video games and ate ice cream or whatever your thing is. Like if nothing mattered, nothing would matter. But obviously something matters to you. You're asking about it, which means that something matters. So I've thought a lot about this. Like, does morality, for example, come from God? Is it objective? Is it subjective? Like all these things. Can an atheist be moral? Yes, I believe an atheist can be moral. I believe that there's something that matters to you. And just because you don't believe that life continues after death doesn't mean that what you're doing now doesn't play some relevancy in what's going on. Not everything that I do comes from the eternal perspective. Right? Like sometimes I'm on this call and I'm like, does it really impact the eternal perspective? No, but I enjoy doing it. Or you're talking about the guitar earlier. Does that really impact my eternal perspective? No. It just means I like to play on the guitar and it lets me focus and it lets me lose myself and eliminate distractions and just focus on the chords and just improving, and I like the sound and I just feel good playing it. Like that's it. So it doesn't have some broad eternal ramifications. And I think the same can be true for an atheist. Just because you don't believe that there's life after death, does that mean that you don't want to be a good father? That you don't want to father your children, or you don't want to lead your wife, or you don't want to take what limited time that you have on this earth and make it fulfilling and rewarding and enjoyable and profitable and see the world and have experiences and have sex and drive in fast cars and like do all the things that you want to do? No, of course you want to do those things. So just ask yourself, what is important? Maybe it doesn't come from the eternal perspective. Okay. And what is important today? What is important tomorrow? I know atheists who are good human beings. Like, I don't think those two things are at odds with each other. I think you can be a good human being and also be an atheist. And I would trust them. I would believe that they have my back. I would turn to some of these individuals for advice, depending on their success levels on the advice I needed. I just don't think it has as big a bearing as people make it out to be. But you've got to ask yourself, what is important to you right now? What kind of life do you want to live? I mean, you could even think from the negative side of things. Like, if nothing mattered, then think about how your physical health would suffer. And the question then is, do you want to live a life riddled with medical complications and disease and illness and not being able to sleep well and feeling like you've got to carry around an elephant on your back every time you go out and people mocking you and looking at you strange? Like, do you want to live that kind of life? Or would you rather get up and feel mobile and energized and then look at yourself in the mirror and say, man, I'm proud of myself, like how I look today and the work that I've done, and being able to carry things and have the stamina, energy to engage with your wife and kids? Then okay, then you ought to be a healthy person. And that's not looking at it from an eternal perspective. Just, I want to live a healthy life. Great, do that. Yeah. I don't know if I'm answering the question here, but I'm just saying, like, you have purpose. There is meaning to your life already. So just look at what is important over the next 50 years, and that's it.
Yeah. I like this question a lot because I think sometimes, and I'm trying to use my words intentionally here, I think sometimes religious people or people believe or think that if they're religious, that purpose is given to them. Oh, well, my religion says that this is the meaning of life and this is the purpose. But even that individual, for them to fully commit to that and for them to truly have faith or believe in that, they have accepted that that is the purpose and meaning. Mm-hmm. And if I don't have religion, guess what I get to do? Create the meaning and the purpose. I get to decide. Even the religious person, in the grand scheme of things, is making a conscious choice that I choose that this is the meaning and purpose of life. And thus, this is why I do what I do. An atheist does the same thing. This is why I wake up in the morning, because I choose this to be the meaning and the purpose of my life. Period. Like that. So create it. And the person that's religious is creating it anyway, right? Or they're deciding
or choosing
to accept that for themselves. Yeah. And that's all that we're doing. And I think, to your point, he makes a point here. It's like, beyond reproduction and continuation of species. Well, you don't think you live on in the memory and the impact of other individuals? That seems like a pretty damn big purpose in my mind. Even if you say there's no eternal upon death, it's like eternal is actually in the lives of those that you impacted, that loved you, that you loved. That's how you continue on. And I have a perfect example of that is my wife's grandma. You would think she is alive. And you would think that all my kids know her. In fact, I could guarantee you right now, I could ask my daughters about Meme and they would tell you all about her, about how great of a woman. They've never met her. Why? Because she left a lasting impact in her kids and her grandkids in such a way that she lives on in all of their lives. And it's awesome.
That is awesome. I love it. That's a great perspective, man. Very powerful.
Thank you, man. Hey,
every once in a while you get some things right.
Yeah, well, I found that on the web. I made that up.
I just pulled it up while I was ranting. You just pulled something. I just read that off of Wikipedia.
Okay, Christopher Melton. My son is 7, athletic kid, but gives up easily. How do I get him to get to grit through the hard times? How do I get him to grit through the hard times?
My youngest son is 4. And he's been using a little bike that doesn't have any pedals. Have you seen these? They're like a bicycle. Glide. Is that what it is? Whatever. Yeah, I don't personally like them. My wife's like, no, this is awesome. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
So he's been scooting around on this thing, and he actually does pretty good. He's like a little hellion on that thing. Okay. And for his birthday, we got him a bike, a real bike with pedals and training wheels. And guess which one he wants to ride?
Yeah, the Glide.
The glider. He can go way faster on the glider and exert a whole lot less energy. So of course he wants to go on that. Path of least resistance. This is not your 7-year-old son's issue. This is a human issue. It's the path of least resistance.
And by the way, it never goes away.
Never.
Like,
even you do it. Even
challenge. Yep.
Whoever the gentleman who's asking this question, he does the same thing. So you might as well ask yourself, why do I take the path of least resistance? And when you can answer that question, you know why he does. And Kip, you and I do it too, right? We all do the same thing. So to attempt to get him to ride his bike, I haven't forced him to do it, because if I do, then he'll hate it and he'll never want to get on the bike.
Yeah. Because it's forced upon him. It wasn't his decision. Right?
And then I'm being a jerk, and that diminishes our relationship and my influence with him. So for me, it's just been gradual steps, just gradual. Hey, bud, can you get on the bike and just show me? Like, I want to take a picture of you on your new bike. That's easy. He can do that. So he gets on the bike. I'm like, give me a smile. We take some pictures. The other day, I said, hey, bud, like, I know you don't really like this bike, but why don't we do this? Why don't you get on, and I'll push you to the end of the driveway, and I'll push you back, and then you can do whatever you want. If you want to get back on your glider, or you want to not ride your bike at all, whatever. Cool. And he's like, okay, I can do that. So I pushed him, and he just put his feet on the pedal. He didn't even pedal. He just pushed it, and I just pushed him. And then the next day, I'm like, hey, let's do that same thing, but why don't you just try to pedal a few? So we're gradually introducing it more and more and more. And then eventually, like, his other siblings and every other human being on the planet, like, he'll know how to ride a bike, and it won't be an issue. He'll never go back. So I just think you have to be a little bit more delicate with children, because it's very easy to, and I've done this. I'm guilty of this more than anybody. And I haven't always been like this. I'm like, do it, damn it. Ride your bike. And this is why my wife teaches our kids to ride their bikes, because I lose my cool. But as I mature, I get a little bit more mentally and emotionally stable and aware, and it's all good. So I just think with kids, you just push them to the next level. You don't push them to the end. Like, you don't push them off into the deep end and, hey, get on the just do it. You're fine. I'll just do it. Just get them to go one more step to the end of the diving board than they went yesterday. And then they'll know, oh, I'm capable of that. And that will boost their competence. It will boost their confidence, surely. And it will open a new window for them to now step in just a little bit further tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So I just think you might have, and I don't know the situation, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, that our expectations as fathers is just sometimes too great. I know that sounds really weird coming from like a self-help place, but for our children, I just think we place too much expectation on them, especially when they're younger, to perform a certain way, when it's your job to coax them into what they're capable of doing. And sometimes that requires a heavy hand, and sometimes it requires a lighter touch. And I think maybe you ought to explore what the balance is there.
Yeah. And what I heard in what you said, Ryan, is celebrate a little bit of that grit, right? You celebrated him going down on the bike. Mm-hmm. That was awesome. Let's do that again.
Right.
Like, just look for opportunities to celebrate the grit. I can't count many times, like my son, whatever it is, my boys will go backpacking with me anytime. I could have asked them in the middle of December, hailstorm outside, and say, hey, do you guys want to go up the mountain and go backpacking? They're like, yeah, let's do it.
Really?
Why? Because, and it's really just because we've done it so many times and so many things have gone wrong that it's been so miserable and horrible that later it was so fun to talk about. So they're always up for the challenge, because it's going to be gnarly. And we've always celebrated. We laugh about it and we tell stories about it, and it's our way of celebrating the grit.
Right. Well, that's a great point. Here's another example. So my oldest son, he will go hunting with me anytime, anywhere, any time of day or night. He's like, Dad, turkey season's coming up. Dad, wake me up at 4 a.m. Let's go do this. He loves it. He just wants to hunt. He wants to be outside. He wants to be with me. He wants to hunt. That's what he wants to do. I got my second son a turkey license. I'm like, hey, I got you a license. And he's like, meh. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we get to go hunt. He's like, I don't want to hunt. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, why? He's like, I don't want to get out of bed early. I'm like, fair point. But when we're on the mat and we're rolling, he wants to destroy people, like hurt them physically and then rip their soul out from them. both of them are displaying some level of grit and fortitude in the face of adversity. They're just interested in different things. So you ought to explore that too. Maybe your son is pretty gritty with the things that he likes, that he enjoys, that he has an affinity with, and maybe you need to explore some of those things.
Yeah. What I love about your example, Ryan, is both scenarios you're doing grit with your kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
That shows your kids what does grit look like. Just like hard work, right? Your kids aren't going to learn the hard work because you're yelling at them from the porch, to finish cleaning up the yard. They're going to learn it because you're out there breaking a sweat, you're bending over back, you're putting in the hard work as well. And they see what that looks like.
Right.
And sometimes it's tough, right? Because it's like, I teach my kid grit and work out hard. Well, guess what I need to do? Work out hard.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Finish the burpees and, do all the same things. Otherwise, it's just me coaching, yelling at them. And that's not fun either.
Right. Yep. Cool.
Cody Poppin choke.
All right.
Sorry, Cody.
You totally messed that one up.
Well, I was thinking like another word, and I thought, no, that's not that
I'm
word.
Sure whatever you were going to say, he has never heard in his entire life before.
Cody Poppin joke. All right. How to mentally and emotionally navigate your kid's new relationship with their new stepdad and not begin to feel replaced or benched by the new guy, and help them navigate as well. What questions to ask, what's okay to ask, when is it okay? My kids are turning 7 and 5. For context, divorce was final 5 months ago. Fiance was introduced to the kids a week after it was final. Now, a little bit of judgment on the new wife.
Yeah, that's tough. But that is tough. I mean, look, yeah, that's tough. I haven't been in this situation. I don't know that anything changes really. I just think that you continue to be the best father that you know how to be, that you continue to be engaged, that you share your stories with them, that you ask about their stories, you engage in things they like, you make the things that they like, the things that you like, and you just be as present and available as you possibly can. I would say on the do nots, like be very careful of undermining their stepdad, because then that might make you look like the enemy or the bad guy, and that would undermine your ability to lead as a father effectively. Same thing with their mother. If you undermine her and make her the enemy, then they live with mom. So now you're the enemy because mom's made you the enemy. So this is a little political too, in that you need to be very aware of not undermining your ex-wife and her husband or fiance. I'm not sure if it's husband or fiance. That's what I would say. I know that's really general and that's really broad, but those are my suggestions. I don't know. Do you have anything to add, Kip, to that?
Yeah. I mean, this is the long game, right? And I think you have to constantly say what's best for my kids. And unfortunately, that may be in conflict with your ego and your self-worth as a father, right? What's best for your kids is to have an amazing stepdad that does an awesome job and is just as amazing as you are, and that your kids completely love and feel like that's their father. That's what's best for your kids, by the way. Now, that's a hard pill to swallow. Now, with that said, realize this is a long game. Like your kids, there is a difference. There is a difference between the emotions of a kid towards their step-parent and their biological parent. Whether we like it or not, it is built in. Your kids are going to have, because you are them, by the way, and they find identity based upon their relationship with you. And they can't help but tie who they are as who you are. That's why it's so negative. Back to what you're saying, Ryan, you talk bad about their mom. Guess who you're talking bad about? Them, because they're part of their mom. They're literally a creation from their mother. So if you insult her, you're going to insult them a little bit, right? And it goes both ways. And so I really think you just got to play that long game, focus on what's best for your kids. It may not feel good for the ego, but realize that they will always have a place for you. And especially, are they boys or we don't know?
I don't think he said.
Your kids may come around, right, at one point where they're like, hey, it's time for me to be with dad. I spent the majority, my son, Ian, it was like 3 or 4 when we got divorced, and he turns 17 and says, it's time for me to move in with dad. That's a long time I waited
Yeah.
for my son to say, I want to be with my dad and live with him. But it was worth it. Right. And really from his perspective, I just felt like I needed to be with my dad more, so but just focus on what's best for your kids. And sometimes that's going to be hard to admit that there is a level of replacement. Let's be frank, but you're still their father and you still have a responsibility to do your job damn well, so do it.
Well said, man. Well said.
Sorry, Cody. Eric Crow, how to get over a breakup when you were the problem. I love it, man. All the past issues have been addressed. Moving forward, how can I show her that I am not the man I was? Tricky there.
Yeah, I think that's where you're going wrong.
Yeah.
Based on what I heard you say, you owned it. Well done. Most people never own it, so you owned it. You also said you're working on the problems or they've already been resolved. Well done. Owned it. Perfect. Fixed it. And then you're like, okay, so how can I prove to her now? How
do I now get her back because I did all those things?
Those are external circumstances beyond your control. And if you look, you guys may never be back together again, and you can't control that because she has to make that decision. You can influence it through the work that you're doing, right? You've fixed things, you've corrected the behavior, you've improved, you've acknowledged it, and you've fixed it. But the superior motive for doing that is for yourself, not for her. And so, and I'll tell you why it's superior, because it's within your control. You getting her to do something, in this case, love you. This is why the genie can never make somebody else love you, right? It's like, that's the external circumstance. Like they have a say in that.
Yeah.
The only thing that you have a say in is how you perform, how you show up, the way that you engage. And what are you going to do? Measure how well you do based on the response that she gives you or lack thereof? So let's say you start going into the gym, okay? We'll just use this as an example. And you've lost 20 pounds and you're getting strong and you look good, you look lean, you look strong, everything's on track and on point there. And she doesn't respond to you. Does that make all that work then unimportant?
Yeah, you going to give up now?
Yeah, it's like, oh, it didn't work, so I guess I can go back to eating like shit and put on that extra 20 pounds and just live the life I was living before.
Because you required an external motivator.
Exactly, that you didn't receive, and because you didn't receive it, that was your motivator. But what if your motivator was, I want to be healthy, I want to be strong, I want to be capable, I want to feel good about myself physically and mentally, I want to be able to perform, I want to have energy, and that was your motivating factor. That's sustainable. That's something that you can continue to do because it's well within your power. You're not giving that authority to anybody else. I actually touch on this in the book Sovereignty. A lot of times when people hear sovereignty, they think I'm talking about their freedoms and liberties. It certainly can be that. But it's also in a more nuanced, harder to see and understand way, you dictating your life, your actions, the way you feel about yourself, based on how somebody else responds. That is how we give away emotional sovereignty. Kip has to think this way of me in order for me to feel good about myself. My wife has to say and do these things in order for me to feel like a man. Those are little items and little times where you're giving away your sovereignty and you're giving away control, power, and authority over your own life. The way I show up, I show up in this podcast, for example, or in Order Man just generally, because I feel good about the way, about me as a human being, the worth of me when I do it that way. And I try to take compliments and criticism all with a grain of salt. Because I don't want, even compliments. When people say, oh man, you're so amazing at this, Ryan, it's like, I'm grateful for that. I like that. But I'm careful of like taking that too much to heart. Because if I take that to heart, then I have to take the criticism to heart as well. And I don't want any external circumstance like validating or being the primary motivator for the reason I do things. I want it to be for me.
Ryan, do you ever, how do I say this? You know, if we look at, like, for instance, one of the great examples of this that you've used in the past is during your separation with your wife and how you focused on you, right? And that eventually, as a result, she came back around and you guys were able to work through things.
Mm-hmm.
How did you do that without coming across cold? You know what I mean? Is there a tendency for us to focus on our sovereignty and, hey, I'm doing this for me, and having it come across cold to those in our life? You know, it's kind of like, I don't give a shit what you think, I'm doing X, and then it rubs them wrong per se, or it comes across wrong.
Yeah, but that's, again, if you're, think about this. Yeah. If that's how you're doing it, you aren't doing it for yourself.
It's still about them.
Exactly. You're trying to prove to them that they don't matter.
You're trying to prove it. You're trying to rub it in their face, not just get their acceptance. It's still about them.
It's still about them.
Yeah, good point.
And I have found personally and anecdotally in other people's lives as well, that when you really focus on yourself, like you're doing the right things, you're eating right, you're exercising, you've got a vision, you've got a plan, you're vying for promotions, and you're picking up new hobbies, and you're doing all the things that we've talked about. If you're doing it correctly, it's very, very difficult to be in a negative space, like a vengeful, like I want to get her back. Like it's very difficult to feel that way about yourself and other people. I've never experienced that. Like when I'm working on myself, I have more fulfillment and abundance and gratitude and respect for other people. Yeah. I've noticed that I'm much easier to forgive maybe any indiscretions against me from other people when I'm in that sort of space. If you're feeling like that, it might be a pretty good indicator that you're not actually doing the self-work that you need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's still about them.
Still about them.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like that. Thanks for answering my question. See, that's how I get my questions in here, guys. Yeah.
It's a good way to do it,
I make up names like Kobe, Pop, and Choke, and then
these are all just made up questions. It's funny.
Okay. Colby Forbush, how have you learned to balance cultivating yourself spiritually, socially, physically, and intellectually, while at the same time helping your children and your wife do the same?
Oh, there's no real like balance. They overlap.
Yeah.
Like they're not at odds with each other. Because look, when you think about balance, like imagine standing on a log. Okay, you're standing on this log, and you're leaning maybe a little bit to the left. What do? You shift your weight to the right. And if you're going too far to the right, then you shift. So you're shifting weight from here to here. That's what balance is. Like, oh, too heavily weighted here. Got to shift over here and find that center so I don't fall. That's what balance means.
Constant correction. Yeah.
Exactly. But so we're looking at opposite ends, right? Like on a log. What you're talking about, they're not opposing. There's no balance required. Like when people say work-life balance, for example, they're talking about work over here as one thing, and then life. Usually they're talking about family, personal life. So professional, personal, at odds with each other. The more I'm at work, the less I can be with my family, right? Those two are at odds. I understand that. What you're talking about right here are not at odds with each other. They overlap each other. When you are strong, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, all the things that you said, you are more capable of leading them spiritually, mentally, emotionally, etc. So anything that you do to improve yourself in those areas is not at odds with and detracting from your family. It actually magnifies it. It enhances your ability. You're the foundation. So if you think about the tallest skyscrapers in the world, what do they all have in common? Strong, deep, sure foundations. The taller the building, the bigger the foundation, the wider, the deeper, the stronger structure that foundation needs to be. And so if you create this bigger foundation of who you are as a spiritual leader, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, all the areas that we talk about, then you magnify your ability to improve their results. So don't ever believe you taking a little time for yourself in the morning at like 6 a.m. and doing a devotional, for example. I use that because he was talking about spiritual references, or picking up a new hobby and engaging in that to some degree is at odds with you leading your family. Now, it can be taken to the extreme. I won't say that because I know guys who go to the gym 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and yes, law of diminishing returns. You're detracting from your family for nothing, really. Yeah. You got the benefit in 40 minutes, and now you're there for 10 times longer than that. Come on.
Yeah, honey, Ryan said that more I do jujitsu, the better father I'll
Yeah,
be. So.
yeah. People will actually say that. So, look, you've got to talk with your wife and you've got to communicate with your kids on a tactical level. There's certainly time that you can engage in these activities that won't detract from the family, for example, before they're even awake. But these, as long as you're not taking it to this extreme and using them as an excuse to withdraw from your other responsibilities, they're great magnifiers. They're not at odds with each other.
Okay, copy. There you go. Stephen Bordage, in your opinion, how and when will our economy bounce back from this?
It'll be years before we bounce back.
Full recovery.
Full recovery. Years. I think we're going to start opening up. We're seeing states that are starting to open up, and they're getting a lot of pushback and criticism for that. I think if this is done intelligently, I think people generally are responsible. You know, like these beaches, the media portrays them as like everybody, and they're like right on top of each other, coughing on each other and licking each other's ice cream or whatever they bring. You know, it's like that's not what people are doing. All right, they're socially distancing themselves. They're 10, 15, 20 feet apart from each other. They're with their families. Like, people are responsible. Nobody wants to get coronavirus. Few people want to give people coronavirus. Like, this is not how it works. So it's time to consider opening this up, being reasonable about how we do it, holding the media to task about how they're reporting this stuff, and really holding them and politicians accountable to the way they're talking about these things. But as far as, I mean, even look, if today we waved a magic wand and we said, okay, everything's open. Sporting events are good. Restaurants are good to go. Big outings, concert, everything's open. I mean, look, do you really think 100% of the population is going to, okay, so we can go back out to eat? Cool, I'm there. Or, we can go to a gathering with 60,000 people? Yeah, I'm there. No, that's going to take years and years. And by the way, some industries are wrecked. Right. And some jobs just aren't there. Like, you're not going back to work in the same job that you had. It's just not, it's not even there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or your company's no longer
gone.
Right. You can even float that cash flow for a full month. I mean, you're done.
Right. Yeah. So it's going to take years. And it's going to take a lot of effort on our part. I would say the best thing that we can do is to provide as many good and services as we can in a reasonable way. And then buy American goods and services. That is going to be very, very important to get our economy back on track. Look at the supply chain. Look at where these materials and products are being bought from, where they're being sold, where they're being assembled, and buy American products. And let's get this country back to work.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was talking with Tim Leach actually last night. He works in the tourism industry by a national park out by Bryce. And I mean, I think 50% of their tourists are usually international travelers.
Mm-hmm.
You can open up the economy tomorrow. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, they're not coming back.
International. Yeah, they're not coming to the U.S.
Well, and that's a great point too, is when you go on vacation, like, go stateside for a while. Yeah. Like, stay here. Like, go visit a state that you've never. Utah's amazing. Maine's amazing. Montana. Like, Hawaii, like Florida. There's so many places that you can go stateside and experience. That's what we need. We need to lift each other up as a country. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, Steve Cox, I'm having an issue coming up with an objective in the contribution quadrant. What advice do you have to help with this issue?
Okay, so contribution is becoming a man of value. We want to make sure we clarify that for the people who are wondering what he's talking about. So we talk about 4 quadrants. We talk about calibration, mental, emotional, spiritual health. We talk about connection, relationships with others, condition, physical health, contribution, becoming a man of value. So what do you want to accomplish, and what value do you need to provide in order to accomplish that? That's how I'd answer that. What is it that you want to accomplish, and what value can you provide in order to accomplish that objective? And then do that. So if you want to lead your family more effectively, and you're having a difficult time with expressing yourself, maybe there's some bitterness or animosity or contention or some trauma in the past that you've had, well, maybe you can learn to be a better communicator and you can express yourself more effectively. And that might mean you complete some therapy sessions. and that's valuable. And now you get to enhance and pay that forward. Maybe you have a special skill or a trait or a characteristic or something that you know that you think other people should know, and you launch a course on how to take photography, and you make that available, and you contribute, and you add value, and you add it back, and you give it, and you sell it. That's being a man of value. So what do you want to accomplish, and how do you need to become more valuable in order to accomplish that objective? Do you think that helps, Kip? I mean, you probably have some insight on that as well.
No, I think that's spot on. And I like the cyclical aspect of that, because when we provide more value, it just helps us provide more value.
Exactly.
And the thing that we're providing value on, it just perpetuates and makes us better men.
And other people better.
And it gives us driving factor. Like, one of the things I like about that, the term, I like the fact that we don't say like financial gain or whatever, and it's a man of contributions, because that could look many different ways. And it doesn't mean that we have to be millionaires to be able to contribute, right? We can contribute to our communities, to different social groups in which we belong to. There's lots of ways that we can do this. And it helps us show up as men, and it really drives this mission of Order Men even further, about men stepping up and contributing in our communities, in our families better, in our workplaces. And to be honest with you, every role of your life, you should be contributing. That's the other thing. And I like that too, is like, look at the roles you play: boss, employee, husband, father, whatever, community member, citizen of the United States of America. Like, those are roles that you play. So how do you contribute in those roles? How do you provide value?
Yeah, my contribution objective for this quarter is to launch our Achievements and Advancements Initiative in the Iron Council, right? Because I feel like, okay, this will be more valuable to the members of the Iron Council. And how could I provide it? By putting together this resource and these options and these tools and these achievements and advancements that guys can work towards. And I've spent the last 30 days at this point, because we're 30 days into Q2, getting the marketing done, getting the systems organized, talking with somebody about administering it. We're getting it all in place, because that's how I want to add value. I want to add value to these guys, and here's one thing that's going to be valuable. So I'm investing my time, energy, and reasonces into making that valuable.
Yeah, perfect.
Let's take one or two more, Kip, and then we'll wrap it up for the day.
Okay, Seth on, geez, man, these names today.
Hard names today, huh?
Seth A. Thank you, gentlemen, for continuing to be leaders for us in these difficult times. I appreciate you guys. What are some things you would do with stimulus money if you had very little debt and have been paid throughout this pandemic by your employer? What type of things would you spend on to help stimulate the economy, or what types of other fiscal responsible things would you do? Thank you.
I'm glad he said fiscally responsible things, because this really isn't a stimulus package. It's like you potentially, a lot of families have been hurting. So here we're going to help you so you can pay your mortgage and you can get some groceries, but it's really not a stimulus package. So like, the government forced you to shut down. I actually like Ben Shapiro's take on this. He says the government forced you to shut your doors to your business, so they're obligated to make amends to some degree, right? So that's what this is. Not a stimulus package.
$1,000, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
I think it's $1,200. I think per person, and maybe some for kids. I don't exactly know what the amounts are. So yeah, I would save some money if you don't have any money set aside. Fiscally responsible, I would invest. I would certainly consider investing. The market's at an all-time low in a lot of sectors. So considering investing, those are financially responsible. Paying off debt, you already paid off debt. Setting money aside, those are all fiscally responsible things to do. Outside of that, look at what you need. Do you need some food storage? Ramp up your food storage. Do you need to buy some ammunition or purchase a firearm? Well, that's a great time to maybe consider doing that. So you can actually help stimulate the economy if that's what you're interested in, and also provide the resources that your family needs: food storage, ammunition, food, security system. We're even thinking about buying a new car right now. Like, this is a perfect time to buy a new vehicle.
Rates are low. Yeah.
I'm not worried about that so much as I can go to a lot and pay less probably for a car now than I could 5-6 weeks ago, because nobody's selling any cars.
Yeah.
Right. So, man, what a great opportunity to go in and buy a new vehicle. We're in the market for a new vehicle for my wife. So this is actually a pretty good time to do it. So just look at what you need, be smart. Don't feel like you have to spend it, that you're obligated to stimulate the economy. Just look at what you need, what your family needs, Look at future needs even. We might need this down the road, and so we'll set this money aside, and this will be earmarked for that thing, braces for little Timmy or Sue or whatever, and I mean, you can make that decision for yourself. For me, I'm not getting any check from the government, but I mean, I just buy the same things I would normally. I don't spend a whole lot of like extra money. I do. Well, that being said, here's a thought: invest in your business. I've got a new camera. I've got some new lights. I've built the office. I just invested in having a video done. In fact, I think I just got a text that said it's done. I'm doing the achievement advancements thing in the Iron Council. Like, I'm investing money into my business. And that's a great investment right now. It's a great place to put money. And also it stimulates growth for other organizations that I'm paying to do these things.
Yeah. Well, and I would go back to what you said earlier. I'd look to where that money's going. And if you want to help stimulate or help, focus on buying locally, U.S. American made, or even within your own community, help the mom and pop restaurant down the street that might go out of business because of this, and maybe purposely order catering through them. And
that's a good point. So. We helped my wife and I helped a company around here. We bought food for Origin several weeks ago, and we called up Subway and we're like, hey, here's what we need. We need to feed like 75 people. Here's what we're looking for. And I want to say we spent maybe like $700 or $800, something like that.
Yeah.
Because we have the means, and so we want to be able to help. So I went and picked it up, and I brought it to Origin, and Amanda Roberts, that's Pete Roberts' wife, she said that she was talking with the lady at Subway and the manager there. And the manager asked about who we were, and she just said, oh, we're family friends. They wanted to help and support. And that manager was so grateful. I mean, Origin was grateful because all their employees got fed and we were able to do that. But the manager I didn't even consider that. The manager of Subway was so grateful that we placed that order because they had really, really been struggling at that point. So
totally. We
don't make decisions in a vacuum. If you're doing good, it's impacting a lot of little moving pieces that you just don't get to see. And I didn't even realize that when we made that, but I'm glad. I'm glad that it helped in so many ways.
Well, and props to actually like our neighbors, for instance, every Saturday they've chose to buy locally from a restaurant and have family dinner, you know what I mean, from some local restaurant. They're encouraging other people in the neighborhood to do the same, right? That way we can keep those restaurants open as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, last question. This is a quick one. Todd Anderson, what deliberate steps do you take to keep Order of Man from becoming an echo chamber?
I mean, we're pretty good in that we have the podcast. We have the podcast, so we're able to have a lot of interesting conversations with people I don't always agree with.
Perspectives, yeah.
Right. Things I don't always agree on. I'm very careful of like when people disagree to like try to take that to heart. I try not to take that to heart. That's something that I'm very intentional and deliberate about. It's like, okay, well, let's like consider this at least. Let's consider the possibility that maybe this individual is right or they have a perspective I haven't considered before. Coaching and mentoring has been very important for me because I get to see new perspectives on running the business and what's working and what isn't. And I've had mentors correct me, and I've agreed with some of it and implemented it, and I haven't agreed with some of it, and I have not implemented other items and considerations. So yeah, I just get a lot of input and perspective from different people. I do want to, moving forward, get more people on the podcast who I disagree with, who have proven themselves capable of having a difficult conversation and disagreements in a respectful way. So if you have any thoughts and suggestions, whether that's somebody who's an extreme feminist to certain political parties or leanings, and we could have a real intelligent debate and discussion about it, I'd be all for it. So if you have any thoughts, let me know.
Cool. All right.
So bring it home?
Yeah, let's bring it home.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So we were live today, Facebook. So to join us, maybe, I don't know, Ryan's always like off the hip on this whole like live thing. So I have no idea where well, I don't even know where we'll go live next. Next you'll be like some, I don't know, Twitter or something.
Well, that's the point. So just sign up to everything. So and you won't have to worry about missing anything.
Okay. So here's you guys' list to sign up for everything. So first off, Facebook.com/group/Order of Man. We are live there today. And of course you'll see a recording of this on our YouTube channel. So to subscribe to that YouTube channel, that's youtube.com/Order of Man. And of course, you can join us in the Iron Council. That's our exclusive brotherhood. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And of course, to stay up to be on all things Mr. Michler, you can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Michler. Not Mitchler, Michler, Michler.
Get it right. Get it right. I was over here on Facebook, as a matter of fact, and I'm just going through the comments. And my high school baseball and football coach and a friend of mine.
You've had him on the podcast, right?
He was on the podcast. Yeah, Matt Labor.
Yeah.
He's trying to sell me a new vehicle because he says I'm in the market, so he wants to sell me a new vehicle. If I wanted a Ford, I might take him up on that offer.
Oh,
I think he's got them all. So, Coach, we'll talk about it. I'll reach out.
That's funny. Hey, and guys, to support this movement and what we're doing here, you can do so a handful of ways, right? Subscribe to the podcast, hop in Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel, ratings and reviews on the podcast, and of course, grabbing your Order of Man swag from the store. And you can do so at store.orderofman.com.
Right on. Well done, man. All right, guys, we're going to call it a day. Appreciate you. Good questions today. I really appreciate the thoughtful and intelligent questions. We'll keep going strong. If you have guest recommendations, please let me know. We'll make sure we get to those. And if you're interested, join us in the Iron Council. We've actually been growing. In the last 30 days, we've picked up, it's grown about 10% in the last 30 days. So it's pretty incredible to see as many men who are committed to improving themselves. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check it out. All right, guys, we're calling it a day. We'll be back on Friday for our Friday Field Notes. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.